Did you all know that we collectively generate over 1.2 billion pounds of trash each day, which actually puts us first place in the world? And it actually costs us $200 billion a year. And just for context, economic-wise, that would put us somewhere in the ballpark in the scale of Greece and Iraq, somewhere in those parameters. But that's not the only thing we waste. We actually waste a lot of things. We waste natural resources, we waste a lot of materials, we waste a lot of food, time, energy, money. And one thing we waste a lot of that we tend to not talk about so broadly is human capital. 2.5 million Americans are currently locked up today. And that 2.5 of human capital equates to $200 million a day. So just as we're number one in trash, we just so ironically have to be number one in trashing humans. Now, as somebody who grew up in inner north and northeast Portland in the mid-'80s, mid-'90s, a lot of my peers, family members, people that look like me in my community, because unless everybody here is aware, inner north and northeast Portland is not what it is today. It was a completely different environment. And a lot of the kids that looked like me were faced with a lot of barriers, a lot of challenging situations and circumstances, myself included. And one of the biggest barriers that they faced was the absence of a father figure. I grew up in a single-parent household for the most part, but my father wasn't around because he was on drugs, or he was in jail, or he's a deadbeat. My father wasn't around because he was spending all his time working and picking up your garbage. And when he was around, it was a very tight ship. Why waste, Alando? Was his most common question he would ask me every time I was leaving the water running while brushing my teeth, or leaving lights on in rooms that I wasn't in. Throwing recyclables in the trash. And most importantly, if I was ever caught leaving any food on my plate and not finishing it. He was a very, very, very frugal guy. It's just something that was ingrained in him from early on, from his parents as well. And with those frugality habits and practices, it was definitely passed through to me. And I'm just trying to paint a picture for you, because when we think about a guy like my father, we're talking about a guy that, you know, if the Goodwill had a mileage program, he'd probably have well over 1 million miles. You know, he's one of those guys, very, very frugal. Old raggedy truck, always wearing dirty boots and jeans, and he's just what he is. He's not moved by what others think. Doesn't have any personal debt. The only thing he invests in really is real estate. That's where all his resources go. But he's a very thrifty man. And so growing up in an environment like that with a father who was that frugal and that thrifty, as well as growing up in a community where a lot of my peers that look like me, without fathers, ended up being wasted, I personally think it makes me very qualified to come up here and talk to you about societal waste, because it is a big problem. And it's something that I look at and I try to address every single day. Now, with a show of hands, how many people in here woke up one day and said, I want to be a garbage man? Okay, we got one, so we're almost there. But I didn't. I definitely didn't. I was like, the hell with that. I wanted to be a basketball player. And, but I am a second-generation garbage man. I'm a 21st century garbage man. That represents East Portland, as that's where I live and that's where my business operates at. And the sad part about it being in East Portland is that I get firsthand access to all the shit. All the shit that society doesn't want, and all the shit that society no longer sees a value. But I gladly embrace all that shit, because I feel like it's my responsibility to do something about it. That if I'm gonna work in this realm, if I'm gonna be in this realm of work, I'm gonna have to find a way to minimize these wastes that are actually contaminating our entire environment. And one of the weird things about this is that being in a world of one, enables you to not only highlight that, but to try to be as innovative as you possibly can. And that's why I made a concerted effort to focus on areas that others tend to not really see of an importance, because when you look at waste, and when you look at impoverished communities, and when you look at disenfranchised individuals, you look at people that have been discarded from the vibrancy of our sustainable ecosystem here, out of sight, out of mind is just a natural practice we all kind of just inherently have inside of us. Once it goes away, it's away from me. But that's not who we are. That's not our culture. Portland's weird, right? But we have to run and lead with that weird brand that we have. And one weird thing that just happens to be is that myself, I just happen to be the only Black-owned garbage company in America in the whitest city of America. Now, I'm not sure what that is, if I'm a unicorn or if that's fate, but I really believe in this ideology of waste because people that look like me get wasted every single day. And it's something that I'm adamantly honored to pursue and tackle and try to figure out some alternative options with. Now, there's some very alarming statistics I want to share with you real quick as it relates to the Black community, people that look like me. And for starters, these rates are actually rates that Blacks are leading in, like single-parent households at 70%, and 90% of which are actually women. High school graduation rates at 63%. And when I say leading, I'm not talking about leading in the context as a good thing. That's actually the worst. And median family incomes at $35,000. And by the way, did you know that children that are from single-parent households are 9 times more likely to drop out of high school and 20 times more likely to end up in prison? This leads me to believe that these statistics have a substantial effect on the financial instability and, more importantly, incarceration rates in the Black community. One other statistic that is a little alarming to me when I start peeling back the onion of incarceration is that Blacks only represent 2% of this state's population, however, 10% of the prison population. And in this region, in this county alone, we represent 6% of the population, however, 30% of our county jail population. This is a problem for me. This makes me very uncomfortable because as somebody who gets to drive through my community and be heavily involved in my community through civic work, whether it's in this city or any other city in this country, I get to see firsthand all the challenges that Black people face in their communities. And a lot of it is predicated off of not having the financial resources, leadership, and social structures in order for them to prosper long term. Furthermore, one very sad statistic that exists in our state, and I don't know if you guys were aware of this, but we actually spend $30,000 per year on inmate and $10,000 a year on students, which is groundbreaking to me. It's heartbreaking, it's sad, and we have to figure out what we're gonna do about it. We just have to find a way to stop throwing people away. And where do we typically throw people away? It just so happens to be Eastern Oregon, where a high percentage of these prison institutions are actually located. And guess what else we throw away in Eastern Oregon? Our garbage. In Eastern Oregon landfills, where a high percentage of all your garbage in here is sent back to. So every time you get rid of something, out of sight, out of mind, it doesn't just disappear, it actually goes somewhere. And I'm wanting you guys to keep that with you. Keep that in your minds and understand that this does have a detrimental effect on us, whether or not right now, but it will long term. But there is one thing that does disappear. And in somebody who's been in this industry now 20 years, not me personally, but our business, 90% of our profits from this industry are actually hauled away to the multinational corporations that own these landfills. 90%. So every time you throw something away, just keep in mind that these are dollars, these are real dollars that are not staying in our communities, that are being shipped back to Wall Street, being shipped back to Houston, where the most dominant players actually have their corporate headquarters. And this waste industry is changing very, very fast. 30 years ago, there were over 100 local garbage haulers in this city. Today, there are 12. And just to think about all those resources that used to be here in this community that are now leaving and going back to benefit other communities is heartbreaking to me. We have landfill waste rates that are increasing. We have recycling rates, as you guys are probably familiar with now, that are decreasing. And this paradigm is no longer working for us. And so, for me, as the owner of a benefit corporation, I've made a commitment. You guys actually embrace me into this family. You guys hold me accountable. You guys demand the best out of me, and you are assuming that I'm going to do what's in the best interest for my community, and that's going to benefit our planet. And I'm making commitments to do that. However, it's very challenging when you're competing against big companies that don't see these value-added principles as a part of their mission for their organizations, because their models are built differently. But the good thing about this is that keeps me optimistic is that this has to change. This model will no longer continue. And I want to share with you some things that my company, Corp, has been working on for the past 4 years that we're very excited about and we're very adamant about pursuing, because without disruption, as you heard in the last presenters, things will just stay status quo. And so I'm demanding disruption. We're going to streamline disruption, and we're going to spearhead disruption, and we're going to demand that this industry look at waste from a different lens. Over the past 4 years, my company has been working on ways to minimize wood waste discards as well as human discards, and bringing those two together to create a truly prosperous ecosystem of a business model for the 21st century. Our main focus is to create green-collar jobs for underserved and underprivileged populations of color. Our main goal is to reduce recidivism rates while simultaneously reducing our state's most valuable, precious resource, timber, from going into our landfills. As somebody who comes across a lot of timber on a daily basis in wood waste, it's sad to me to see this material end up in holes or incinerators being burned. And I feel that this material, in dimensional in its form, has higher and better uses that could create our 21st century green economy. A triple bottom line, circular economy, is a very, 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 very important focal point that we should have as it relates to the waste industry. Waste should be our raw materials for manufacturing in the future. And what do I mean by triple bottom line? Well, economically, we will commit to keeping our profits local, investing them local, and making sure that organizations, community-based organizations, PTOs, all of these folks and all these people that are making a lot of concerted efforts to make sure that our communities are sustainable, vibrant, we're going to make contributing contributions to those groups. Environmentally, we're going to keep our trees out of the landfills. That is a strong commitment we're going to take. And socially, we're going to make sure that people that look like me stay out of prisons. These are fundamental to our values. And as we look towards the 21st century, we have to find ways to be different, innovative, and outside-the-box thinkers. If this city wants to become the 21st century city, a leader in sustainability, then we're going to have to take chances. We're going to have to do things outside the box that are going to have to bring all of our resources together, all of our constituents, all of our community-based organizations, our governments, and our businesses to focus on what it is our true outcomes are going to be. And what does that look like, again, right? Well, we've faced significant challenges before in our city, and we've addressed them. We've faced environmental issues in the past, and if you look at our climate action plan, in 2015, we set a very explicit goal that we were going to reduce carbon emissions 80% by the year 2050. What if we just looked at a different model where we talk a lot about equity in this city, but I have yet to see a true palatable way in which we can actually truly get to an equitable ecosystem? Well, what if we just looked at one area in particular? Not to say this is it, but it can be an option. What if we look at that median family income rate for blacks at $35,000? And in my mind, equity means economic equity. And so If we set a date of 2030 and we start focusing on how do we increase that number from 35,000 and up, and if we just set a benchmark, then we actually have a palatable mapping strategy and plan where we can get to those defined outcomes. For example, if we set 40% on that 35% median family income, we would have a $50,000 median family income for blacks in this region. That is impactful. That would enable folks to start building wealth, buying homes, breaking the cycles of poverty, et cetera. All of these things that would have beneficial trickle-down effects for that community will only have a direct benefit to the rest of this community. We have to minimize waste, and it's the only direction we can go. But I can't do this alone. I need your guys' support. I need your help. As this is the Benefit Consortium, the group here, the bright minds, everybody that is looking to challenge status quo to do things differently outside the box, we have to do this together. I'm going to ask that you all demand your local governments, your business community, to stop throwing away people and stop throwing away our money. Because all of that money and all of those resources that are being driven off of our waste back to other economies and benefiting their economies, while our communities here are in despair and struggling still, is no longer going to work. And as long as I will be in this industry, I will not stand for it. And I ask that you guys join me in this effort. I believe that the solutions to our most pressing issues are right here in this pile of trash. What you guys may see as trash, I see as treasure. And with that, I'm going to leave you with the question that my father, to this day, still asks me: why waste? Thanks.